main course had been slain. Chance for peace and justice gone, and the thoughts have been in vain. The prince had been abducted, and he had gone the path of war. Now the 1,500 men are dead, and the Zulus at the door. Zulus attack, fight back to back. Show them no mercy and fire at will. Kill or be killed, facing or waiting a hostile spear. A new frontier, the end is near. There's no surrender, the lines must hold. The story told, rules strict control. Nature of the faithful day as they head towards the drift. Stacked in boxes fortified, preparations must be swift. Spears and shields of oxen high, facing uniforms and guns. As the rifles fire, echoes high, beating like the sound of guns. Zulus attack, fight back to back. Show them no mercy and fire at will. Kill or be killed, facing or waiting a hostile spear. A new frontier, the end is near. There's no surrender, the lines must hold. The story told, rules strict control. In 79, when a few held the line, when the last stand was made and the empire saved. Zulus attack, fight back to back. Show them no mercy and fire at will. Kill or be killed, facing or waiting a hostile spear. A new frontier, the end is near. There's no surrender, the lines must hold. The story told, rules strict controlled. A hostile spear, a new frontier, the end is near. There's no surrender, the lines must hold. The story told, rules strict controlled.
Okay, good morning, everybody. How are we all doing today? It's been a bit of a long time, hasn't it? 3 weeks to be exact. It's Larsen Live. It's back. I'm back, from South Africa. And here we are. I'm sorry, my mic is on. I don't know what the problem is. Last I checked, the mic is on. Or am I just insane? Give me 1 second here. Can't believe this shit up. Oh, what the? Yeah, so I guess I'm going to have to edit this down a bit. I don't know why. This Streamlabs continues to fail me constantly. Suppose is why my viewer count decreases more and more every week. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I'm back. It was a very nice trip. There was no vor, there was no necklacing either, pony throat. But yeah, here we are. Have a nice vacation. I come back and as usual, everything sucks. So, let's just get right to the news such as it is. See what we got here. You know, we have terrible, terrible news going on in politics and society, as always. So, because I'm feeling slightly merciful towards my own country, let's start off with insanity going on elsewhere, and then we'll move back into America. Okay, so, big news going on in the UK. That is spelled Yookay. A young Scottish girl went a bit viral, getting arrested for swinging a knife and an axe at some guy. Not even swinging it at him, just sort of threatening. Don't touch my little sister, she's fucking 12, she says. Basically, this young lady has been forced to take up arms in the Gaelic tradition to protect her family from some Muslim gypsy guy because nobody else is going to protect her. She got arrested. I don't know, what else can I say? You know, good old two-tier Keir Starmer running things as usual. Of course, Keir Starmer being a NPC who has never had an original thought in his head by his own admission. This has become May-made pretty quickly. You know, can I judge as if America's any better? No, I can't, but, you know, here we are. Okay, what else do I have going on? I don't know, I think there might be too much of a delay for me to really do this effectively, to be quite honest. I don't know what's happening with Streamlabs. Don't know why there's such a huge delay. But, you know, here we are. Sorry, I just got a text message. Okay, so let me delete that. Some spam call. Okay, everybody says it's working now. That's good. Okay, not to be outdone by, you know, Anglo-Gaelic insanity. America's going off the rails as usual. In the news here, of course, there was the Minnesota Catholic Church shooting where some, you know, delightful transgender person lost their shit and shot up the school. And of course, everybody's blaming everybody, and once again, this is yet another case of this person being on the radar of law enforcement for a very long time. From what I gathered, for a month, this person was, you know, talking, and they proceeded to do absolutely fuck all. By the way, if you hear barking, we're dog sitting our friend's dog in addition to our own dog. Also, if this stream seems a bit slapdash, that's probably why. No offense to the dog, of course. I'm very happy to dog sit. Okay, looking at some comments here. People talking about a huge delay, but they say it's working fine now, which is good. When it says, say the line, Bart. Yes, the line. He was on our radar. Yay. Sorry, I just had to take a drink of water for a second. Yes. The shooting thing is a problem. Boy, you know, de-institutionalizing crazy people and just having them out on the streets to be cared for by the community, that worked out great. Thanks, Reagan. This is, of course, another drop in the bucket for the ongoing issue of American crime rates. This, again, becomes a Democrat versus Republican thing. Gavin Newsom, taking a break from, his hobbies of presumably murdering prostitutes and, trying to get into Dorsia. Gavin Newsom is still trying to meme a presidential run into existence. It's not happening, Gavin. Nobody likes greasy sociopaths. But anyway, he's taken to the Republicans. And I quote from the California governor's press office. Fox News criticized California, but they're refusing to report this. Louisiana's murder rate is 4 times higher than that of California's. I mean, that's probably true, but I can't help but think that he might be leaving out a few things as to why Louisiana's murder rate is higher. It may not be Republican governance, as a matter of fact. Do you really want to have this conversation, Gavin? He goes on. Mississippi's murder rate is almost 3 times higher than California's. I mean, if he really wants to have this conversation, that'd be great. I mean, I'd be more than willing to have this conversation in particular about why exactly crime in America is heavily concentrated in a few places and a few demographics. Do you really want to have this conversation, Gavin? I almost said Gavin McLeod. Mr. Newsom. Do you really want to have this conversation? People were very quick to point some things out. Like, look at Louisiana's homicide rate. 80% of them are committed by black people. The other 20% of homicides are committed by literally everybody else combined. Biff Slankovich says, Ashley Bubbitt, $5 million. Everyone is suing for our tax dollars, including the January 6 partners. Not sure what you're referring to, sir. Pointer says it's always the ones you most expect, referring presumably to the Minnesota thing. Yeah, it's, wow, this person has been talking for a month about how much they hate Christianity and how much they hate all kinds of things. They're going to shoot up a school, and then they did it. Who could have imagined? I'm shocked, I tell you. Like, I believe that people should have a right to bear arms. With that being said, you also have a responsibility to, be proactive and enforce laws and keep guns out of the hands of crazy people. Pony Throat says, Gavin McLeod, is that the guy from Planet Zeist? I see what you did there, sir. No, Gavin McLeod was your captain on the Love Boat, and soon will be making another run. The McLeod clan, of course, came from the planet Zeist, as we learned in Highlander 2, The Dick Kickening. Highlander 2 is an absolute abomination, which has had numerous fan edits and cuts trying to make any kind of salvage out of that crap fest. And it wasn't necessarily successful, but, you rearranged a few deck chairs on the Titanic, which is better than nothing, I suppose. Okay. Robert Diaz says, Gavin Newsom's DAs plead down crimes in Democrat-run states redefine what violent crime is on an effort to lower crime stats. Yes, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You want to know the real reason why nothing gets done about crime in America? It's because once they start analyzing crime and really, going hard on analysis and probabilities, they notice some uncomfortable truths. And then everybody gets mad, and everybody just dances around the problem, and nothing gets solved, and we're all just kind of standing around holding our dicks. But, if we're really going to have this conversation, Gavin, that'd be great, actually. I mean, I would love to have this discussion with you. Speaking of American politics and doomed quixotic runs for public office, Zohran Mamdani made a bit of a fool of himself during his New York City mayoral run. They had Men's Day in Brooklyn, which is, I don't even know what Men's Day is. Anyway, they had an outdoor gym. Zohran Mamdani gets on the bench press in his, dress shirt and completely fails to bench press 135 pounds. Some people say the weight may have been even lower. May have been more like 115 if they were, 35s instead of 45s on each side of the bar. I think right then and there, Mr. Mamdani, Mamdani Sahib, torpedoed his chances of being the mayor of New York City. Because every man sees a man failing to bench press, the bare minimum of weight and just sort of awkwardly cringes. We get the man ick, as they say. And, I wasn't going to vote for him anyway, but yeah, I'm super not voting for him now. Hey. Bill Slankwich says, Ashley Babbitt, get off Gavin. Sir, I don't care for either person. I don't care for the January 6 morons. Especially since most of the deaths from January 6 were literally caused by fat asses having heart attacks or overdosing on meth. Instead of, the actual non-violence of January 6, where people were just kind of idly walking around and respecting the velvet ropes. But no, I don't like Gavin Newsom either. I don't like, greasy-haired, dead-eyed sociopaths who, have nothing but a empty lust for power. I have no desire to elect Patrick Bateman as the President of the United States. And to reiterate, I'm not going to elect, little twig boy Zohran Mamdani as mayor of New York City. Okay, so I'm looking at some pictures, and yes, he was indeed lifting 135 pounds. There were 45s on each plate. Now, to be fair, we don't know how heavy the bar was. It could be one of those, girl bars that are 20 pounds instead of 45 pounds. Hey. Anyway, he seems pretty happy with himself that he was able to get 135 pounds halfway off his chest before, needing a spotter. Dare I say, this might, he might pull a Michael Dukakis here and, utterly failing to show off his virility. But we shall see. Alpha Marie says, thank you, Baxter. Not entirely sure what you're referring to, but, I'll take your word for it. Robert Diaz says, Gavin Newsom reminds me of Mephisto from Ghost Rider. A smile that screams, I'm going to eat your soul. Yeah, kind of. It's been said, I like the American Psycho comparisons myself. Other people have said Gavin Newsom looks like, the villain of an early 90s kids movie, which, is also true. And, bear in mind that 135 pounds is okay as a warm-up or if you're just starting out. But, yeah, the idea of a 35-year-old man having apparently never worked out in his life, that's kind of upsetting. Yeah, maybe I'm just weird, but, yeah, I don't want low testosterone twig boys running, anything, really. Okay. Moving on from that, we're going to go to Canada. Canada being, perhaps slightly behind the United States in the, trip down the toilet in some ways, but on other ways, much farther along. Doctors in Canada propose a brilliant new idea. Let's euthanize disabled babies. Canada's already really pushing that medical, death assistance, MAID, medical assistance in death. I think I read once, wasn't it like almost 5% of deaths in Canada now are like euthanasia? Obviously, consensual euthanasia is not enough. We got to do it to babies now. Canadians always like to talk about their, Canadian values, which makes them special. Their values that are identical to somebody from Boston or the Upper West Side of Manhattan, cough, cough. But, I guess these are the Canadian values now. The same values as, classical Sparta. Let's just kill the weak babies. So says at Flesh Simulator, look, guys, it was either euthanize babies or stop importing Infinity Indians, and sometimes tough choices have to be made, okay? Well said. Now, to be fair, this is not confirmed yet. This is just a proposal. Somebody else asks, how disabled are we talking? Do we mean like quadruple amputee or just, legally blind or even nearsighted? Yes, we're going to euthanize the Untermenschen, in a progressive and social justice way. Canada's not a serious country. I mean, the United States isn't really either, but like I said, we're all going down the toilet. Robert Diaz says, Gavin Newsom looks like an ambulance-chasing scumbag that you might find on a highway. Ponythroat says, he looks like an evil magnate trying to build a parking lot over the orphan puppy sanctuary. Okay, Happy Champlain from that great movie. I don't know what you're talking about, sir. Let me look up Happy Champlain. Okay, Happy Champlain is it's basically the homecoming weekend at the Champlain University in Burlington, Vermont. Parthroad says, the slippery slope gets more slippery every day. Also in unrelated news, a state seeks to build a large statue of Moloch in Ontario. Robert Diaz also says, Japanese researchers have found a way to kill the defective genes that cause Down syndrome. Correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it like, it's having an extra chromosome, not anything defective. It's trisomy 21. But hey, if it works, good for them. At least somebody's doing some real science these days. Instead of just, euthanizing everything and, that's what they're doing in Canada. And then in America, you've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr., doing, seances over chicken guts or whatever the hell he's doing. Alfred says, thank you, Baxter, is an American Psycho quote. Was that in the movie or the book? Because I have the book. I've just never gotten around to reading it. Okay, Ponythroat says he meant Happy Chapman. Ah, yes, the villain of the first Garfield movie. Yes, how could I forget that cinematic opus? The peak of Garfield is and always will be the Garfield and Friends cartoon show from the 80s and 90s. That is a hill I shall die on. Okay, let's see what we got here. But yeah, speaking of Japan, let's talk about Japan for a second. Japan, they may have potentially cured Down syndrome, but the Japanese government did something a bit silly. They had a plan where, due to declining birth rates, the solution is, of course, to import millions of Nigerians and Indians. Instead of, incentivizing people to have babies naturally. After receiving massive backlash from the Japanese public, the Japanese government has officially backtracked on this plan. So, essentially, the idea was we need to bring in, foreign workers. We're going to have, little set-aside towns for, African people and, Yeah, people were a bit upset at this. I mean, there's already, for some reason, a lot of Pakistanis in Japan. They're complaining on TikTok, oh, Japanese cuisine has too much, too much pork. They drink too much sake. This is offensive to us. I don't know why they would go to a non-culturally compatible country, but whatever. But, it's good to see that the people were able to raise a ruckus and, fight against some government diktat that they didn't vote for. I'm not necessarily against immigration per se, but, just the government just deciding out of the blue to bring in lots of people without any consent from the people, that's not good. Got some comments here. Alfredi says, thank you, Baxter was in the American Psycho movie. I don't remember that scene. Anyway, Robert Diaz says, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Canada can tell you about how bad society became after mass imports of migrants. I mean, let's not forget the United States either. Shinseki Evans says they've got all those hikikomori and Nisa could be employed. Yes, they do. People always say, like, well, America in the 19th and early 20th century brought in a lot of immigrants, and that worked out okay. And they assimilated, yes, because they didn't have a massive all-encompassing welfare state to, come and, suckle gibs off of. Back in those days, you either made it or you went home. And in fact, like, more than 30% of immigrants to America went home because they couldn't, make it and get jobs and things. Punnythroat says Japan is not culturally compatible with India. Japan is actually known as one of the cleanest countries. Yes, we've all seen that video of the flooding in the Tokyo subway where, like, the water just looks like clean enough to drink off of. Alpha Marigi says it's pretty messed up how we apparently need to import low-skill labor when AI is going to kill those jobs anyways. Yes, that is confusing. Almost as if the destruction and chaos is the goal in and of itself. Wink, wink. Okay, what else do we have? I think we got some more information to talk about before we get to the, the pop culture and silly side of things. Got a few more things to talk about. What we got here? Okay, so some interesting news came out from... Actually, I'll get back to that in a second. From The Independent, a British paper. David Mitchell says, the term mansplaining is unfair. That's what men call a conversation. And dare I say, he is correct. A lot of men are mildly autistic and they enjoy explaining their bizarre niche hobbies to people. I myself am slightly like this. Men like to explain things. It makes men feel good. To pretend that this is an act of misogyny was always nonsense. People were upset about David Mitchell. And I quote, David Mitchell is the world's most British conundrum. He's very funny in public, but he's functionally Hitler as a private citizen. See also Jeremy Clarkson. Why is he Hitler? I don't know. I mean, I don't know who David Mitchell is, but I do know who Jeremy Clarkson is. Jeremy Clarkson just seems like your average British yob. The yobbishness, the hooliganism is fundamentally British. And, just let him be. I mean, I like Top Gear, even though I'm not a huge car guy. But yes, men like to explain things. And apparently women don't like this. I mean, are we still doing the mansplaining dialogue? I guess so. Alfredi says, why do we need Sikh truckers when self-driving vehicles are right around the corner? I mean, I'm not crazy about the idea of self-driving trucks either. It'd be nice if, we could get qualified drivers instead of randos who can't even speak English who run over people, as has happened. Okay, Ponythroat says, hired native employees would mean having to pay them a wage, not being able to hold deportation over their heads if they complain about abuse. Yeah, how terrible. It's like those lard-ass farmers I talked about a couple weeks before I left for my vacation. It's like, oh, these Americans don't want to work for, $7 an hour for 12 hours a day. Yeah, fucking Americans trash, they can't work. Ponythroat says, nobody wants to hear me explain why Double Dragon 3 The Rosetta Stone is a bottom-tier beat-em-up. Yeah, it's not great. Double Dragon 3. I mean, it's kind of nice to have all those different characters, but it's just the controls that are kind of wonky, like the having to buy moves sucks. Yeah, it's not great. Not sure why you brought that up, but yes, it's really not good. Anyway, bridging the gap between pop culture and real news. Okay, so a Twitter post went a bit viral, or a response to a Twitter post. From WDI.Afghanistan, a message from Afghan women and girls inside Afghanistan. Today, August 15th, the Taliban celebrated their Victory Day, broadcasting across all media. Inside our homes, Afghan women sit in silence, picture of crying little girls in Afghanistan. So says J.K. Rowling, of all people. These women and girls are in desperate need of help. Where's the international effort to liberate them? Hey guys, let's liberate Afghanistan. That'll work great. Nobody ever tried that before. Gee, I mean, what's the worst that could happen if we go to Afghanistan, we fight the Taliban, and we save the women from their own culture? Nothing bad could possibly happen. Joanne, I understand you've been a little busy since 2001 with your writing and all that, but surely you had to notice what happened, right? In case you're wondering, yes, saving the moms and dads in Iraq and Afghanistan was one of the major goals of our little shit show in the Middle East. That was a direct quote from W, saving the moms and dads. And also Laura Bush had a bit to say in November 2001. Okay, good morning, I'm Laura Bush. I'm delivering this week's radio address to kick off a worldwide effort to focus on the brutality against women and children by the Al-Qaeda terrorist network and the Taliban. Okay, the people of Afghanistan are rejoicing as the regime is in retreat across much of the country. Afghan women know through hard experience what the rest of the world is discovering. The brutal oppression of women is a central goal of terrorists, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, how'd that work out for us? Yep, we tried to save the women, and the people didn't want it. So we proceeded to, we smacked the shit out of the Taliban, and then we just kind of stood around with our thumbs up our asses for 20 years getting pot-shotted until we gave up and went home. Well, the real Afghan war hasn't been tried yet. Colonialism hasn't been tried yet. Okay. Alpha Marigi says people have been going to bat for Anita Sarkeesian recently. There's no feminism too hated and stupid for people to try to put it back in the cultural microwave. Yeah, if you really pay attention, you'll see a lot of the, the stupider parts of feminist discourse get recycled constantly. I'll make no mistake about it. I support women's right to, have sex as they please and vote and, get education and, all that crap and equality. I agree with all that. But out of the stupid cultural discourse gets published, it fails, and then it just gets recycled over and over again until they get the results they want. Like the whole idea of, gendered toys and things. They've been pushing that since the 60s and 70s. It's never worked, but they keep pushing it, thinking that this time it'll work. And similarly, I guess they're just going to keep pushing the, stupid gender crap in video games until it finally works. It's not going to work. I mean, I can tell you for a fact that people are turning away from the AAA games. People are going to the retro games. I'm friends with a retro game dealer who, tells me that the business is actually pretty hot right now. Shinseki Evans says, Final Fight is better than Double Dragon. Like, the OG Final Fight is better than the OG Double Dragon. I will agree with you on that. And also, I'm going to be controversial here and say that the NES Double Dragon is better than the arcade Double Dragon. Yes, graphical downgrades aside. There's always something really loose and floaty I found with the controls of the arcade Double Dragon. Like, it never really felt good to play, whereas the NES Double Dragon was much more, crisp, and it felt more tight control-wise. But that's just me. However, conversely, Double Dragon Neon is a masterpiece. There is no Final Fight in Neon as far as I'm aware. And I do feel that Final Fight Streetwise is a underrated game. But still, it's not Neon. Hey, Ponythroat says... Sorry, Biff Stankovic says, listen to the new Warriors album. Mark Anthony, Lauren Hilden, Manuel Miranda. I'll have to check it out. Ponythroat says, self-driving cars have been just around the corner for 10 years and they're still not here. Just like fusion power. Ponythroat says, Joanne Rowling is going to add an Afghan wizard named Baka Bazi or something. I'm surprised she hasn't. Alpha Enriquez says, real colonization is more effective in regime change. Yeah, it really is. And that's the problem I feel like with America's, half-ass sort of adventures in imperialism. And that, like, we're kind of afraid of being imperialists. So we just kind of, like, pussyfoot it. Whereas, we just let this kind of slow peat burn kind of burn. And that honestly does more damage to the country on the whole. Like, if we just went into Afghanistan and Iraq, said we're the American empire, just kicked the shit out of them, and then put up a puppet government, and we're just totally ruthless, I feel like in the long run that would have killed less people. Would have been shocking in the beginning, but it wouldn't have been a slow peat burn. Alpha Enriquez says the Coomers are now giving the CCP money because multiple Japanese publishers kowtow to Western wokesters. Yes, it's all part of, Chinese soft power to make, good enough video games because everybody else is going to complete shit. And I guess this ties into those labubus, which are popular now. I had to look up what a labubu was. It's some kind of collectible capsule toy that the Chi-Coms are putting on the market. And yes, the CCP is also funding, woke shitlibs. Ponythroat says Double Dragon 3 on the NES was better than the arcade version because it had Bimmy in it. Yep, Bimmy to Jimmy. Yeah, I'm honestly, going back to the Afghanistan thing, I honestly bet that in the next, 50 years, you're going to see people essentially demanding, colonialism again. Because, the tides are kind of turning against, infinity replacement migration. So, eventually someone's going to come to the conclusion that if we can't bring them here, but they need to have, they have a right to Western governance, perhaps we should go bring Western governance to them. And then you've invented woke colonialism. Now, personally speaking, I don't think it's anyone's business to fix human nature, as Peachy Carnahan would have put it. They're savages one and all. Let's leave them alone. Let them, burn women and play polo with each other's severed heads. That's my opinion of things. But, we can't do that. Oh, and also another reason why America's Afghanistan venture failed is because the defense companies make more money if they let the war go on in perpetuity instead of just decisively ending it, which is what Julian Assange and the WikiLeaks showed. But, that's a whole different issue. Shinseki Evans says, I don't know why the U.S. didn't let the Soviets have their way with Afghanistan. Rainbow 3 was propaganda. Yes, it was. And realistically speaking, I think it's because we wanted to kind of stick our thumbs in the Soviet Union's eyes, like they did with us in Vietnam, where they were, funding and training and supplying the Vietnamese. We did the same with Afghanistan. Ponythroat referring to labubus says it's literally Beanie Babies again. It literally is. Every so often, it seems to me that there is some sort of inane collectible toy that gets really hot for a brief period. And it gets, bought up by scalpers and they make a lot of money off it. And, then basically after a year or two, everybody realizes this is completely pointless and they give it up. See Beanie Babies, fidget spinners, pet rocks, etc., etc., etc. Pogs, and, so on and so forth. I still have a couple of fidget spinners. I still don't know what the purpose of these things were, but, here we are. How did fidget spinners even get hot anyway? Then again, one could ask that about all these things. Okay. Moving on to the pop culture side of things. There was a bit of a kerfuffle in the world of professional wrestling this past week. I'm, of course, referring to the Raja Jackson fiasco. 1 second. It's got a text. Yes, Raja Jackson, the son of UFC former champion Quentin Rampage Jackson, got into a bit of a tiff with some, outlaw mud show wrestler. And apparently what happened was the mud show guy, Psycho Stu, threw a beer can off his head thinking that he was another wrestler. He thought it was a work. It was not a work. Raja Jackson was legitimately angered by this. He went on his Kick stream or his Discord or whatever stupid streaming app it was and basically loudly announced that he was going to premeditate beat the man to death with his bare hands. And so he got invited to the Outlaw Mud Show wrestling event. And the idea was that he was supposed to, working, take him down, give him a few fake punches, and that was that. He proceeded to legitimately throw him down and punch him in the face 21 times after he was knocked unconscious by the initial double leg takedown. Yeah. He was told, apparently, give him that receipt, bro, tag his shit. I mean, one receipt would have been one thing, but 21 was a little too much, sir. And then he gets invited to another wrestling show a week afterwards. This is... Boy, I wonder why the business is going down the shitter. And this is apparently a debate for some reason. Okay. Ponythroat says, weapons that are just a metal tube filled with explosives that cost pennies a pound, computer systems from the 80s being sold at like 10,000% markup as if they were EpiPens. Yes, that does happen a lot. Alpha Rigi says, fidget spinners, he bought one for 36 cents. It was discounted for $2 because it died and I had an employee discount. I mean, the thing about fidget spinners is, like, they did one thing. They spun. And, I don't know. Things catch on for some strange reason and nobody knows why. Just let the fad happen, I suppose. See what else we have going on. And finally, Mingus Reedus, the son of actor Norman Reedus, was arrested for assault in New York City. I'm going to presume it's him just taking out his anger on the world for being named Mingus. I mean, to be fair, if my name was Mingus Reedus, I'd probably just assault everybody I see. Also, clearly, this man gets his looks from his mother. Not Daryl there. But seriously, imagine going through life named Mingus Reedus. That's pretty much one step away from Dorcas Malorcas. Yes. Ponythroat says, Fidget was the best dwarf from Time Bandits. I've still never seen Time Bandits. Nor have I ever seen The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. I, probably should at some point. So yeah, that does it for my prepared remarks. Keeping it a little short today. That's alright. So say your last pieces now, should you desire. Ponythroat says Mingus's middle name is Lucian. Mingus Lucian Reedus. Sounds like a character J.K. Rowling would write, says Ponythroat. Yes. I mean, if he is in fact, you know, some sort of elf lord, then I guess his name is okay, but I don't think he is. Alpharita says, got a job as an assistant manager at a gas station. Congratulations, sir. But yeah, it's the kid's name is Mingus Reedus, and he looks like a space alien. That's... Boy, some birds were never meant to fly, I guess. And the memes are fast a-flying. Wait till Biggest Dickus hears about this. Okay. So it doesn't seem like anyone else has anything else to say. So... Okay, Alphamrigi complained about his landlord. I'm sorry about that. But yes, it seems like nobody else has anything else to say. So for Larsen Halleck, this has been Larsen Halleck. All of you have a good day.